This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello there and welcome to Global Business Africa. We'll be giving you insight into Africa's business and financial markets. I'm Uche Okoronkwo, coming to you from Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Let's start with a look at the markets. Now, globally, equities headed for their biggest fall in weeks. That's after the U.S. Fed startled investors by signaling that it might raise interest rates at a much faster pace than assumed. Now, MSCI's emerging stock index slumped 0.6% on the day, extending losses to a fourth straight session and hitting three-week lows. Though a positive end for Chinese stocks today did cap index losses. South African stocks retreating as the U.S. Fed's hawkish turn hurt appetite for riskier assets. Major miners were a big drag as a stronger dollar hit metal prices. Now, also coming up on today's show. The world has enough renewable energy potential to transition from fossil fuels, but is Africa ready? And Egypt launches its first locally produced electric car. And windfall gains for ginger farmers in Nigeria as the coronavirus pandemic drives up demand. Well, let's start off today's show in Tunisia. The country has set a target to meet 30% of its electricity needs from renewable energy by 2030. Currently, 97% of Tunisia's electricity is generated from fossil fuels, which is mainly natural gas. But as CGTN's Adnan Ashaushi now reports, authorities in the North African nation are focusing on increasing investments in solar and wind projects.
Tunisia has a current power production capacity of 1.175 megawatts installed in 25 power plants, but majority of it is from non-renewable sources. The country's Industry, Energy and Mines Minister Mohamed Boussaid said that the state will invest around $3.6 billion to achieve its objective of having 30% of its renewable energy by 2030. It hopes to achieve this target in partnership with the private sector.
This is the future, the transition from traditional electricity production from natural gas to renewable sources of energy. The national target is 3,800 megawatts. It will involve many partners, including the National Electricity and Gas Company, that will produce 300 megawatts in the first transitional phase.
Only 3% of Tunisia's electricity is generated from renewables, including hydroelectric, solar and wind energy. The Director General of Electricity and Energy Transition explained that opting for renewables is a strategic choice for the North African state.
The energy situation in Tunisia is characterized by a growing deficit in primary energy sources. It reached more than 57% in 2019 and 2020. Since 2013, Tunisia has put in place a strategy for developing renewable energy. The whole new energy strategy is based on renewables.
The 2015 project is based on three regimes. The first one is the auto production regime, which allows industrialists and consumers to produce their own electricity and control the cost of energy consumption. The second regime targets small and medium-sized projects. It aims to develop partnerships between foreign investors and locals. 44 project agreements that will produce 400 megawatts of electricity were signed under this project.
The last regime was the concession regime. It was the pillar of energy substitution because it was for big projects which are developed by mega companies. Therefore, in 2018, we launched the implementation of the photovoltaic cells, which calls for tenders under concessions to produce 500 megawatts. This project is awaiting Parliament's approval.
The installation of 500 megawatts of solar photovoltaic energy is scheduled on 5 different sites in the governorates of Sidi Bouzid, Qarouan, Gafsa, Tozeur and Tataouine.
According to the Minister of Industry, Energy and Mines, Tunisia is determined to accelerate its energy transition with a view to achieve energy security through a diversified energy mix and to improve the country's economic competitiveness. عدنان شواشي CGTN Tunis.
Meanwhile, 3 Egyptian ministers, as well as experts and officials from the automotive sector, witnessed the launch of the first locally produced electric car in the Middle East and Africa. It is the result of cooperation with China's Dongfeng Automotive Company. Here's CGTN's Yasser Kim with more on that story.
It's finally out, the first local brand electric car in the region, and Egypt chose China to be its partner in this milestone.
We can say it's the biggest country all over the world to produce the electric vehicle. So therefore, we agreed with the biggest company there. One of the biggest company is number 2 in China to manufacturing the vehicle, which is Dongfeng. And we started communication from 2019. Accordingly, of course, we selected a reasonable model from their electric vehicles to be localizing in Egypt and to be sold for the Egyptian customers.
The model chosen is Dongfeng's E70 with 147 horsepower. It comes with different model specifications.
Electric vehicles normally have a very few maintenance requirements and have, of course, no, we can say it's very minimum of the liquid which are going to replace it. So normally, these vehicles have very big advantages. It's like a free maintenance. Because we are going to localize the vehicle itself, and the localization idea is very important to this project. So we can start by around 50% from the vehicles to be localized.
25,000 cars will be produced per year, to be doubled in 3 years' time. Meanwhile, the government is working hard on providing the proper infrastructure for electric vehicles.
We are launching very soon a company to fund and technically build charging stations, public charging stations. We are aiming at 3,000 public stations. Each post has a dual socket, so we are talking about 6,000 concurrent users anytime. So, and this will be done in 18 months.
The deal has helped revive state-owned Nasser Automotive, which was nearly dissolved after years of shutdown. But the agreement is more than just local production. It's about transfer of technology.
We are looking forward for the success of the E70 to have the feeding industry develop. We are seeking the development of the feeding industries to be able to produce what would be called an Egyptian car from the battery to the design and to the components, and hence the exportability of the car and even the buses in the future.
The price will be a competitive range from $18,500 to $25,000, with a $3,300 discount for the first 100,000 customers. The first batch will be in the market end of 2021. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Now, Botswana's diamond firm, Botswana, has unearthed the third largest gemstone in the world. The 1,098-carat stone was found earlier this month in Africa's leading diamond producer. It is 73 millimeters long, 52 millimeters wide, and 27 millimeters thick. The biggest diamond in the world was discovered in South Africa in 1905, and the second largest in northeastern Botswana in 2015. Now, officials say the discovery has come at a time when the nation is in great need after a slump in diamond sales last year resulting from the coronavirus pandemic.
And this, we must thank God for it, because it's millions of years of painstaking work. And that's why it's rare. And even the find is rare. So well done. Thank you, God. And thank you, Botswana.
And Now look at other corporate headlines this hour. Africa and UK-focused energy company Kibo Energy's primary focus going forward will be on renewable energy opportunities. Now this will see Kibo jointly develop a portfolio of waste-to-energy projects in South Africa. Kibo therefore intends to appoint specialist advisors to assist it in developing and implementing an appropriate disposal strategy to dispose of its coal assets or possibly reposition these assets to make use of alternative fuel sources other than coal. And a wholesale and retail group, Massmart, says its localization focus in a partnership with South Africa's Department of Trade has led to an increased number of local suppliers. The process involved retaining industrial engineers to review 600 products and selecting those with the highest potential for local manufacture based on local manufacturing capability, as well as target pricing and local availability of raw materials. And the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority has granted a private firm, 7-Star Global Hangar, a license to operate an all-inclusive maintenance, repair and overhaul facility on aircrafts in the country. Now, 7-Star Global Hangar is the first MRO facility in Western Central Africa, and according to aviation experts, will stop the ferrying of aircraft abroad for maintenance, as the facility can carry out different types of aircraft checks. And websites of major U.S. airline companies, American Airlines, Southwest Airlines, United Airlines and Delta Airlines, faced an outage on Thursday, according to monitoring website Down Detector. More than 1,000 user reports indicated problems at Southwest Airlines, with over 400 user reports indicating the same for Delta Airlines. That number was around 300 for the other two airline companies. And that's a look at our corporate headlines. And we are heading into a short break now, still coming up on the show. Uganda cuts its benchmark lending rate by 50 basis points to 6.5%. And Zimbabweans living abroad sent home a record $1 billion last year.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay. We'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible and why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Central Nairobi. Hello, Nairobi.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business. Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and Global Business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Welcome back. Now, the Bank of Uganda has cut its key lending rate by 50 basis points to 6.5%. The Monetary Policy Committee says the economy still needs support to recover. Here's CGTN's Michael Baleke reporting.
The Governor Bank of Uganda and his team say the economy grew moderately in May. They also noted a persistent contraction in private sector investment, which they partly blame on uncertainties brought about by the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic.
The recovery is expected to strengthen with above-trend economic growth in the outer years as vaccine effectiveness increases, which should allow relaxing the current public health measures, and a stronger rebound in domestic demand.
The vaccination process is expected to gather steam in the coming days after Uganda received an additional 175,000 doses of the AstraZeneca jabs. The Bank of Uganda believes this should help normalize economic activity quickly.
On the upside, moderate growth in domestic demand is expected over the forecast horizon, and the strengthening global recovery is generally expected to be supportive of economic growth.
The central bank acknowledges that due to the rising public debt, there is little space for financial stimulus packages to respond to the fragile economic growth. Michael Baleke, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
Now, an estimated 3 million Zimbabweans live and work in the diaspora. Many of them send money back home regularly, and those remittances are now surging to a record $1 billion. That happened in 2020, nearly double what was sent the previous year. Here's CGTN's Farai Mwakutuya with more from Harare.
In 2016, Takwana Charanini started a service for people abroad to send airtime back home. It has since expanded into money transfers, some of which are the difference between life and death.
Sometimes it's for happy moments like weddings, sometimes for birthdays, and sometimes it's for critical issues where somebody is being told that they can't get admitted into hospital up until they pay. So we've got what we call the only company that does home deliveries in Zimbabwe, and our delivery sort of destinations range from home, office, and sometimes to hospitals where you're told somebody needs oxygen.
The agency's exponential growth is indicative of the surge in homeward transfers.
On a monthly basis, we're moving millions now. So for a very young company to come into this space and do what we're doing, it's unheard of.
Diaspora remittances totaling $1 billion were the country's second largest source of foreign currency in 2020, second only to platinum.
The flow does not look like it will recede anytime soon. Statistics from the central bank indicate that just over $411 million was received from Zimbabweans abroad during the first 4 months of this year, up from $221 million during the same period in 2020.
The multiplier effect for that particular increase in terms of household income goes to demand for fast-moving consumer goods. It means that Zimbabweans in diaspora are positively playing a part in economic development, especially when you look at real estate sector, buying machinery in various economic sectors. Then also lastly, which is very important, there is actually a surge in terms of remittances that are being directed towards the formal system in the country, as opposed to the informal channels that were being used in prior years.
Government has developed a diaspora policy to encourage its nationals abroad to invest in capital projects and key sectors of the economy. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
And let's stay in Zimbabwe. The International Monetary Fund expects the country's economy to expand by about 6% this year due to an expected bumper harvest, as well as improved power supply and an increase in manufacturing and construction. Now, the forecast is almost double a prior prediction of 3.1% growth and is closer to the projection by the nation's finance minister that GDP will increase 7.4% this year. In rare praise of the authorities' policy reforms, the IMF said attempts to contain the nation's budget deficit, increase reserve money, and the introduction of a foreign exchange auction system did signal that Zimbabwe is moving in the right direction. Meanwhile, maize farmers in neighboring South Africa are expected to harvest 7% more of the staple crop during the 2020-2021 season, as yields are now boosted by favorable weather. Now, the country's Crop Estimates Committee is expected to forecast the 2021 maize crop at 16.4 million tons. That's up from the 15.3 million harvested last season. Here's CGTN's Angelo Coppola with more.
That good maize crop expectation is despite some water and hail damage experienced in some of the growing areas, and demand is also good.
It's definitely trending upward, both on the human side but also on the feed side. With the intensive feed users, pork, poultry and dairy, using more maize, that's definitely beneficial for them. Then obviously also exports, both deep sea exports and exports to the local Southern African market.
An integral part of any farming activity is the availability of storage capacity.
So in terms of storage facilities, definitely available, both in the formal market, the former co-ops or the agri-businesses, but a lot of farmers also invested in on-farm storage, and that definitely assists with increasing storage capacity in South Africa.
Getting the right price for a crop is one of the aspects that farmers have no control over.
I think for now we will definitely trending sideways, perhaps more pressure on the downside. Due to the crop coming in. I mean, that's a seasonality factor that, during harvesting time, there is downward pressure on the prices. But if we look at the fundamentals, we'll probably be in the same level going forward into the next production season as well. A lot of demand on the international market, coming out of China as one specific country.
Farming is a tough business and farmers need to be prepared for any eventuality, including managing their profit, losses and debt. And in a good season, that's especially important.
Farmers that were in the fortunate position to be able to have a good crop with a good price, because that doesn't come around often, they will definitely consolidate debt. And farmers that were in a better position will expand. We can expect that as well. I think this crop and the price came at the right time for a couple of farmers that were in trouble, and they could farm themselves out of trouble again.
A bumper maize crop is great news for farmers and for consumers because it will alleviate some of those food security concerns for the region and for the country. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
And heading to Tanzania now, the government says it has approved the exportation of mineral concentrates. Exports of the concentrates were suspended since 2017 due to allegations of theft and fraud. Here's CGTN's Isaac Lukando with more.
Containers of gold concentrate being exported will once again be a familiar sight at the port of Dar es Salaam. A clearer permit system has given the government confidence to resume exports. Non-disclosure by mining companies had forced a ban by the government.
In the beginning, we were told that there was one type of mineral, gold. But following investigations, we discovered that we have 5 different types of minerals. So through the state company, we will now sell all 5 of them, unlike in the past. But secondly, once we have the sand and inspect it, we will sell it within the country.
In 2017, the government withheld 227 containers of concentrates with around $280 million worth of gold following a tax dispute with Tanzania's largest mining company. With more checks in place, industry players now believe tax evasion in the mining sector will be harder to pull off.
It's no longer the Tanzania revenue alone. There is defense and security committee involved as well, so it's more eyes. What has changed, if you ask me, now the government has got more information and yes, getting what's straight for it.
The ban on the export of concentrate came after changes in the country's mining laws in 2017. Among other things, the new laws imposed higher taxes on mining companies and enabled the government to get higher stakes in mining companies.
Mining contributes 6.7% to Tanzania's gross domestic product and earns the country over $1 billion annually. The government's stated goal is to raise this figure to about 10% by 2025.
Mining companies say the lack of processing capacity in the country was the main reason behind the export of mineral concentrates. With the recent launch of Tanzania's first gold refinery, the country hopes to earn more from its mineral concentrates.
The copper concentrate, mostly called makinikia, had value in it, and the locked value was the gold content. Most of it will be copper. But if you compare the price of copper and gold, they're 2 miles apart. So to get the gold contained has to be refined.
The government says it's not just monitoring the export of concentrates, but other minerals as well. It's hoping that closer scrutiny will allow the country and its citizens to bask in the glow of its mineral wealth. Isaac Lukando, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
Now, here in Kenya, tea is one of the top foreign exchange earners. In 2020, the revenue from tea exports exceeded $1.12 billion. But according to a recent report by British charity Christian Aid, Kenya's tea production is under threat due to climate change. But what does this mean for the tea farmers, and certainly what measures have been taken to tackle the trend? Here's CGTN's Beryl Oro with more.
For the past 50 years, Robert Rop's 1.5-acre tea plantation is the only revenue source for him and his family. But climate change is the new threat to his livelihood.
Tea is what has fed us since we were kids. When there is drought, tea doesn't grow because it needs a lot of water. When you use fertilizer and there's drought, it burns the tea bush.
In Kenya, around 3 million people depend on the tea industry directly or indirectly. In Kericho County alone, 600,000 small-scale farmers run family-owned tea farms. According to a United Nations survey of 700 growers in all 7 of Kenya's tea regions, farmers observed changes in rainfall patterns, distribution, and reduced yield tied to climate change.
These impacts of climate change affecting the nutritional value of tea, affecting the flavor, and also causing reduction in its growth. And this will mean that the economic impact, because tea is a cash crop that is exported, economic impact will be felt at the community levels and in people's pockets.
Staff at the Tea Research Institute seek to come up with new varieties that can adapt to harsh weather conditions.
Yeah, what we're doing to assist our farmers to survive climate change is, number one, to practice agroforestry within their farms. That is to go for trees, and we are advising them which trees to go for. Fix nitrogen and also ameliorate the hot weather or other unfavorable weather conditions.
According to the report, Kenya is likely to see the areas with optimal tea growing conditions shrink by 25% as the average annual temperature is projected to rise by up to 2.5 degrees Celsius between 2020 and 2050. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
You're watching Global Business Africa. We're going to take a short break now, but still coming up on the show. China successfully launches 3 astronauts into space. And Japan to introduce vaccine passports by around late July.
It's just taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
No one again began holding guns.
Machine guns from police forces toward the protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time?
Not at all.
The Excellency, thank you very much for your time now. What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
Business in Africa is at a crossroads. We celebrate those who are adopting and thriving despite the challenges, from grassroots to big businesses. Global Business takes you along for the ride as we track the making of a giant. Only on CGTN.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
I try to not let it affect me, but there are days when it does. I'm a human being, and to see patients in a hospital bed and their family members are not there, there's no one there to hold their hand, that human touch, you know?
I just hope everyone can remember that the situation is not permanent and that everything will get better eventually.
And now look at other headlines at this hour. Zambia's founding father, Kenneth Kaunda, has died at the age of 97. He was hospitalized at the Maina Soko Medical Center, a military hospital in the capital, Lusaka. He was the first president of Zambia, serving from 1964 to 1991, and amongst Africa's few surviving liberation heroes. And South African police are investigating the deaths of 20 suspected illegal miners. The unidentified male bodies were found at two locations on Tuesday and Wednesday in the northwest province town of Orkney near Kirkstop. And Cote d'Ivoire's former president, Laurent Gbagbo, has arrived back in the country after spending the past 10 years in the custody of the International Criminal Court. Now, the opposition leader flew from Brussels after judges confirmed his acquittal of crimes against humanity. He had been accused of instigating post-election violence in the country in 2011. More than 3,000 people were killed during the unrest before Gbagbo's arrest. Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari has traveled to Borno State to appraise the security situation there. Now, Borno State Governor Babagana Umara Zulum explained the reasons for the president's visit during a statewide televised address. The president is also expected to commission various projects, including the first phase of 10,000 houses for the resettlement of refugees and internally displaced people. And that's a look at our top headlines this hour. Now, a report by the Economic Commission for Africa and the African Airlines Association indicates that airlines in Africa made a revenue loss of over $10 billion in 2020 due to the impacts of the coronavirus pandemic. Now, the report, which analyzed financing options and cost structures of airlines, revealed huge differences in the size and structure of their debts. The organization said this suggested that stakeholders in the sector may not need a one-size-fits-all solution to address liquidity challenges. However, they did say financial support to the sector must be tailored to the specific features of airlines. Also needed is direct support from governments and the creation of platforms to coordinate efforts towards the survival of the industry. Well, earlier I had a chat with AFRA's Secretary General Abdurrahman Bertay about some of the key developments and trends they noted in terms of performance of African airlines so far. Take a look.
As you know, the COVID-19 hit African airlines hard in 2020. From March 2020, airlines have to ground their aircraft due to the closure of borders. And we have seen a drop in capacity and traffic in 2020. African Airlines carried 38 million passengers in 2020, compared to 95 million in 2019. The loss of revenues, as you said, is estimated at $10.21 billion in 2020. And obviously, 2021 will be another difficult year for our industry. We are expecting to end the year 2021 with a level of traffic around 65% of the level we had before the pandemic. And at AFRA, we estimate the loss of revenues for the current year at $8.5 billion. And experts in the industry are estimating the restart of the industry in end of 2023 and 2024.
As you mentioned, AFRA has been an avid advocate for direct government support for airlines and, of course, for them to create platforms to coordinate their efforts towards the survival of the industry. But given the realities that COVID-19 has presented when we talk about government's financial capabilities, what are your thoughts on the role the governments have played so far? And how do you think, given the realities, they can help going forward?
As you know, the COVID-19 has impacted not only the aviation sector, but all the economies across the continent. And since March 2020, we made appeals to government and development and financial institutions. However, the support is very slow today to materialize, and we are continuing to advocate for the support to our industry. At government level, there are many forms of support to airlines. It can be loans, it can be grant, and also it can be deferral of some taxes and charges. And also the role of a government for the restart of our industry is very, very important. They need to speed up the rollout of vaccines across the continent. As of today, less than 1% of African citizens have received the 2 doses of vaccines. If you compare to other regions in the world, this is still very, very low. And we need vaccination to for the restart of our industry. We also need to harmonize the health protocols across the continent. And we are seeing that, for example, PCR tests are very expensive in Africa when it's free in some other regions. So we are advocating also to reduce the cost of PCR tests. And also it's very important to adopt interoperable digital pass approved by the World Health Organization. And the government need also at the same time to implement the flagship projects from the African Union Commission, namely the Single African Air Transport Market, the African Continental Free Trade Area, and also the Free Movement Protocol, which will drive the growth of aviation across the continent. And the role of a government will be also to create an environment for airlines sustainability across the continent. As you know, African airlines were struggling with a lot of challenges even before the COVID-19. So we need to handle these challenges with governments.
And heading to China now, the country has successfully launched 3 astronauts into space, marking a milestone in the country's space program. Now, the astronauts expressed their gratitude and excitement as they entered the core module of the country's first space station.
Shenzhou 12 reporting. We've made it into the Tianhe core module, our home in space. Thanks for the support from the whole nation and for the dedication of those who made this possible. Salute!
Now, the 3 astronauts are the first to take up residency in the main living module. In the next 3 months, they'll be carrying out experiments and preparing the station for receiving 2 laboratory modules next year. The team was sent on board the Shenzhou 12 spaceship early Thursday and arrived at the Tianhe core module after 6.5 hours. This is the first manned mission and the 3rd launch of a total of 11 missions for the construction of China's space station. Here's Sun Ye with the details.
At 15:54 Beijing time, Shenzhou 12 has successfully rendezvoused and docked with the core module of the China space station, and it had came according to plan 6.5 hours after that liftoff this morning at 9:22 a.m., which is also uplifting for all of us here. The rendezvous and docking process was shorter than that for Tianzhou 1 in 2017, which took almost 2 days, all thanks to the new technology that has sped up the process.
For cargo ships and manned spacecraft, we'll engage this kind of automatic fast docking as often as the conditions allow. It's much faster this way, and after 2 successful dockings, this technology is considered comparatively mature.
Fast docking allows astronauts to stay a much shorter time in the comparatively narrow spaceship, saving their energy for the next step of their journey, 390 kilometers above Earth. Sun Ye, CGTN, Beijing.
And heading to Japan now, Chief Cabinet Secretary Katsunobu Kato says the country aims to introduce vaccine passports by around late July. Now, the government hopes the move will help revive business travel and tourism. The passports could initially be issued on paper, but authorities will also look into providing digital versions. Now, Japan has struggled with its COVID vaccine rollout, lagging behind a number of other wealthy nations. Meanwhile, France has eased several COVID-19 restrictions in the country. This includes halting an 8-month nightly coronavirus curfew and easing requirements for wearing of masks outdoors. Wearing a mask will still remain mandatory in crowded places like street markets and stadiums. People are also required to wear a mask indoors in public spaces, including at work, with an exception for restaurants and bars. Now, the surprise announcement comes as France is registering about 3,900 new virus infections per day, but it is down from 35,000 in the March-April peak. The European nation has reported nearly 110,600 confirmed virus deaths, one of the highest tolls in Europe. However, over 58% of France's adult population has received at least one COVID-19 vaccine dose so far.
I think we advance in a pragmatic manner, taking into account our results. We can be satisfied with our strategy, which was to take proportionate measures according to our results. We look at where we are and we adapt. We are 15 days after the latest decisions, and we saw that we can adapt measures. That is what the Prime Minister has announced. We do it with the satisfaction of being able to progress because of our good result, the collective discipline, and our effort to get vaccinated, but also with caution because it is not over yet. I insist on that and invite all our citizens to continue getting vaccinated, which is the only long-lasting way to fight this pandemic, and we will continue then to progress step by step.
And the European Union has launched its $910 billion coronavirus recovery plan. $167 billion of that is due to go to Spain. Of course, Spain's economy was one of the hardest hit during the pandemic. Here's CGTN's Rahul Patak reporting from Madrid.
A historic agreement, one that could have far-reaching consequences for the economy of Spain. The Next Generation EU fund was drawn up a year ago as a response to the financial fallout of the pandemic. Its focus on large-scale investment in green energy and digitalisation was initially proposed by Spain and Portugal. 12 months on, the plan is ready to be activated, having formally been agreed upon by all 27 EU member states.
The recovery plan is the most ambitious economic plan in Spain's recent economic history, and therefore I would like to be very clear. This plan is the greatest opportunity for Spain since Spain joined the European Union, and that was 37 years ago. Therefore, opportunities like this only arise a few times a century at most, and this opportunity Spain is not going to let pass.
Now, Spain will be one of the biggest beneficiaries, receiving $167 billion in total, half coming in direct payments, the other half coming in the form of loans and grants spread over 5 years, reflecting the fact that Spain was Europe's hardest hit economy during the pandemic.
And in a way, it goes in line with what most other countries in the world are doing when they have the capability of applying significant changes to their economy. So that's what we're seeing now. I mean, both in, for example, China or in the United States or in many other parts of the world. If you're going to be spending all this money, try to spend it on something that will have a long-lasting effect, a long-term effect. And that means probably modernizing your infrastructure, helping on the digitalization.
Another major focus will be the green economy. Spain plans to switch entirely to renewable energy by 2050, with an additional $16 billion set aside to boost electric vehicle use. The government will look to receive its first payment of funds towards the end of the year, just as most EU member states intend to reach a 100% vaccination rate. If this coincides, then the country could expect a much-needed bounce back from the pandemic. Rahul Pathak, CGTN, Madrid.
Well, let's now turn to the eastern Chinese city of Ningbo. Fenghua district has big plans to become an innovation and tech hub. Well, our reporter Liu Zhaoxun explains how the district's Future City project will attract and retain new talent.
A rising star city at the south gate of Ningbo. In 2019, Ningbo's net population increased by 340,000, ranking fourth in China behind Hangzhou, Shenzhen, and Guangzhou in terms of population inflow. The core of the city's development are its people and a focus on better and more enjoyable living. This Future City project of Fenghua has some exciting ideas on how to make that happen.
Fenghua has a profound cultural heritage and a strong economic foundation. In recent years, the Future City has been built to accelerate economic development. The Future City project is not only about infrastructure, but also the all-round operating mode. From planning and design to operation and management, our company is responsible for the whole process. The community is looking to gather more high-level talent together, retain them, and create a more suitable development environment and public supporting facilities for young generation.
U-Book is a library open to the public for free. It holds a collection of 5,000 books. The meeting room, the cafe, and the library at one place to attract more visitors come here.
Another important opportunity is the cooperation between the Future City and Shanghai Lingang Technology Innovation Center. It helps the area have their incubation mode.
Ningbo has a friendly business environment with certain policy support. The city is also close to Shanghai, a financial center. In the future, we will actively connect with internet financial innovation enterprises and give full play to the advantages of the precisely positioned financial science and innovation industry.
In terms of urban industries, 84 projects have been introduced, with an estimated investment of 7.4 billion yuan in new industries, an expected increase of nearly 4,000 jobs. This has injected vitality into the rapid development of the new city.
It's a new opportunity to regenerate the local area in the perspective of the integration of the Yangtze River Delta. to re-examine the development of the industrial system, to rethink how to effectively integrate the resources of the high-end industrial chain, and to systematically promote the innovative development of local industries.
At the same time, the future city has made breakthroughs in the development of urban-rural integration.
We will continue to focus on industrial revitalization and inject new vitality into rural revitalization. With a homebound business culture and existing industrial cluster resources, we will build an innovative cultural and tourism leisure place.
The core concept of future cities is all about people, from their business environment to the harmonious relationship between man and nature. The future city will be an example of how to have and enjoy a better life. And Fenghua is at the heart of this initiative. Liu Zhaoqin, CGTN, Ningbo.
And on that note, let's take a quick look at commodity markets today. Oil prices dipping as a stronger US dollar brought them off multi-year highs. But of course, losses were limited by a big drop in US crude inventories. We saw Brent futures dropping 0.4% after reaching the highest since April 2019 in the previous session. Meanwhile, gold prices hovering near their lowest levels in more than a month, bruised by an elevated dollar and yields. That, of course, was after the US Fed signaled that it might raise interest rates sooner than expected. Now, traders say a recovery in gold should be approached with caution, as we have yet to see how a change in tone from the US Fed will fully play out in markets. Well, let's now take a quick break, still to come. Ginger farmers in Nigeria in windfall gains as the coronavirus pandemic drives up demand.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climate and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
I've been Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Johannesburg,
Ethiopia,
Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Now, in Nigeria, ginger farming has been experiencing a boom since the outbreak of the coronavirus. Prices have more than doubled since last year due to a surge in demand that has been fueled by claims that it boosts the immune system and protects against COVID-19. Now, this has created an income boost for both the farmers and the ginger traders in the nation's northern region. Here's CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam with more.
It's another planting season for ginger farmers like Micah Jega. The 60-year-old is expanding his production capacity to keep up with rising demands. In his 5 years of cultivating the cash crop, he recorded marginal profits. But his sales and profits more than doubled last year at the peak of COVID-19.
You know, with the COVID, it's like maybe many people were using ginger as one of the ways to keep their bodies immune. Just discovered there was a high need for that. Yeah, I was able to sell about 500 fresh bags. That was during the COVID-19. I just discovered a high demand.
32-year-old Obadiah Roro is one of the Nigerian youths cashing in on the ginger boom. The computer science graduate buys the product from farmers like Micah. He cleans, packages and resells them for exports.
After expenses, labor, transportation, sometimes we can make as much as, from 1 ton, we can make as much as 200, 300,000. A bag of ginger, as at June last year, is around 25, 26,000 naira. So, but this year, as I'm talking now, a bag of ginger is 40, 43, 44, 45,000. In fact, there are instances whereby we have buyers coming in with their cash, so but we're short of resources, we're short of the ginger to be able to meet their demands. When I was to go for my postgraduate, it was from the ginger profit I made that I sponsored myself.
Nigeria is Africa's leading ginger producer, exporting to some African countries, the Middle East and European markets. The nation earned $10.4 million from ginger exports in 2019 alone. Despite controlling about 14% of the global ginger market, experts say the country has the capacity to produce even more.
There's more foreign exchange to be earned from producing ginger and exporting ginger. Ginger should be part of our agricultural policy since it earns, it brings in the foreign exchange and things. So mostly the farmers sell to middlemen or to wholesalers who buy at a cheaper price from the farmers and then sell at a very high price. So if the farmers are organized, as a cooperative, they can be able to get a better bargain on their prices of ginger. We need more lands to be cultivated with ginger. And the only way that can happen, the government can leverage the teeming unemployed youths that we have and engage them in agriculture. There is money to be made there.
Many have linked the Nigerian ginger boom to the crop's unique spice and medicinal properties. Its anti-inflammatory and antioxidant effects, among other benefits, serve as an immune booster against diseases. Agricultural practitioners want the government to leverage on the youth population to ramp up ginger production. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Plateau, Nigeria.
And last week, hundreds of people traveled across South Africa to a village in the KwaZulu-Natal province after being tipped off on the unearthing of possible diamonds there. Informal excavation has been ongoing since the weekend following the discovery by a herdsman who dug up the first stone. Well, CGTN's Angelo Coppola tells us more about the treasure hunt.
Well, I'm 3 hours away from where the actual fortune seekers or treasure hunters are operating right now, and whatever's happened since the start of this gold diamond rush, should we call it, thousands more people from around the country are actually gathering in the area and staking their claims out and starting to dig. And this is after images started being posted on social media of people showing what they thought were diamonds to their friends. That trade has started happening. This, of course, is a very rural area in KwaZulu-Natal province, and unemployment levels, as we know, are high, sometimes ranging between 30 and 70% of people are unemployed in the area. So they're desperate. So any news of an opportunity to make some money is being grabbed at, and those rumors of the diamonds or purported diamonds being found in the area have led to more people from around the country sort of congregating on the spot. So as it stands right now, people are still flocking in there, and the police are a little bit anxious because there is a chance that this could become and spiral out of control and become a super spreader event. As it carries on now, people are still uncovering those stones, and as you heard, there is trade happening. We'll see if those numbers in trade continue.
Well, that's it for this edition of Global Business Africa. Remember, you can send your feedback to the contacts on your screen. You can also follow us on our various digital media platforms. For me, Uche Okoronkwo, and